Hi, I'm Margaret Cole. If anyone had told me my own daughter would one day turn her back on me, I would have laughed in disbelief. Emily was everything to me, my reason for waking up, my motivation to keep going when the world crushed me. Her father left when she was just 5, a coward who vanished like smoke, leaving me with overdue rent and a shattered heart. I never let Emily see me break. I'd cry at night while folding her tiny clothes, wipe my tears, and greet her with a smile by morning. She never saw my pain. I made sure of that. I worked 2 jobs for nearly a decade. Mornings started with cleaning offices downtown, and evenings ended hunched over a sewing machine, tailoring dresses for women who never learned my name. All so Emily could have what I never did: stability, opportunity, dreams. I remember watching her fall asleep with books on her chest, her tiny fingers curled like rose petals. I used to kiss her forehead and whisper, "One day, the world will know how beautiful you are," and I meant it. I wasn't just raising a child, I was building a future, a better one than mine. That Emily was a quiet child, wise beyond her years. She always sensed when I was tired, offering small comforts like, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll be rich one day and take care of you." She'd draw pictures of castles with me inside them, wearing a crown. I kept those drawings like sacred treasures. They reminded me that love, pure love, didn't come from diamonds or designer shoes. It came from a daughter who believed her mother was a queen, even if the world saw a worn-out woman with tired eyes. Emily gave me purpose, pride, and peace I didn't know I deserved. We didn't have much, but we had each other. While other families went on vacations, Emily and I built forts out of old blankets. We watched the same movies 100 times and made popcorn with whatever seasoning we could find. Our laughter echoed through that tiny apartment like music. I couldn't give her the world, but I gave her everything I had: my time, my energy, my unwavering love. When she cried after losing a spelling bee, I held her until she fell asleep. When she aced a math test, I danced in the kitchen like a fool. I celebrated her every win like it was mine. As she grew older, I never missed a milestone. Her first crush, her first heartbreak, her acceptance letter to college. I was there for all of it. I remember crying in the car after dropping her off at her dorm. Not because I was scared, but because I was proud. She had become the kind of woman I'd always hoped she'd be: smart, kind, determined, and she never forgot to call me. Every Sunday, without fail. Our bond was strong. At least, that's what I believed. I never thought anything or anyone could break what we had. I was wrong. When she met Jason, I saw something shift. At first, I was thrilled. He seemed polite, successful, and well-mannered. Emily's voice sparkled when she talked about him. She glowed in a way I hadn't seen before, and I wanted nothing more than her happiness. I welcomed him into our lives with open arms. But slowly, Emily began to drift. Calls became shorter. Visits became rare. She started using words I'd never heard from her: prestige, status, image. And when she introduced me to his family, I felt it instantly: the judgment, the sighs, the polite dismissal behind their polished smiles. I didn't fit in their world. I wasn't subtle about that. I wasn't rich, refined, or decorated with degrees. I was a mother who wore her sacrifice like a second skin. But Emily, she tried to shrink herself around them. I watched her tone down her laughter, hide her old stories, and even change how she dressed. The girl I raised, the wild, curious soul who used to dance barefoot in the rain, was vanishing into someone else. And though I smiled through it, deep down I felt her slipping through my fingers like water I couldn't hold. Still, I never said a word. I didn't want to be the bitter mother. I didn't want her to feel torn between 2 worlds, so I stayed silent. I told myself, "She come back. She's just overwhelmed." I offered to help with the wedding. I even stitched her engagement party dress by hand. She said thank you, but never wore it. Jason's mother bought her a designer gown instead. I found it hanging in Emily's closet. Tags still attached. My work forgotten. My love discarded. But I said nothing, because that's what mothers do. We swallow hurt for our children. I remember one night, sitting alone in the living room, flipping through her childhood photo album. Each page was a memory, a promise, a reminder of the journey we walked together: her first steps, her missing front teeth, her prom night when I curled her hair and told her she looked like a movie star. I held that album like it was a lifeline, proof that I hadn't imagined our bond, that I wasn't crazy to believe in us. I whispered, "Come back to me, baby." But the only answer was silence. Heavy, icy, final. Sometimes I wonder if Emily ever looks back, if she remembers the nights I stayed up sewing her Halloween costumes by hand, or the times I skipped meals so she could eat, if she remembers how I ran through the rain with a broken umbrella just to bring her a forgotten textbook. I wonder if she knows what it feels like to watch your child grow into a stranger, while you're still holding on to who they used to be. I didn't raise her for applause. I raised her for love, and now that love feels like a ghost. Emily was my heartbeat, my living legacy. I never imagined a time when I would be anything less than sacred to her. But life has a cruel way of teaching you that love isn't always enough. Sometimes, no matter how much you give, people still choose someone else, and when that someone else has money, power, and influence, you start to look invisible. But I wasn't invisible. I was her mother. I gave her everything I had, and still, she chose them. Jason's family had wealth, the kind that speaks in whispers and walks in silence. They lived in a world of Sunday brunches, curated reputations, and photo-perfect families. And Emily was mesmerized by it. I saw it in the way she studied their every move, mimicked their mannerisms, adopted their tastes. Suddenly, the girl who once loved thrift shops and indie films was obsessed with wine pairings and designer labels. She started speaking differently, more careful, more rehearsed. The fire I once saw in her eyes was dimming, replaced by something colder, calculated, and I began to realize they weren't just influencing her. They were replacing me. It started small. A missed call here, a text left unread. The weekly Sunday calls turned into quick check-ins every few weeks. "Sorry, Mom, we've just been so busy." At first, I understood. Weddings are overwhelming. But soon, it wasn't about time, it was about image. When I offered to host a small pre-wedding dinner at our family's favorite diner, she hesitated. "Jason's parents already planned a formal event at their country club," she said, eyes darting away. I felt it in my gut. Shame. She was ashamed of me, of my world, of the life I gave her. I tried not to take it personally. I really did. I even told myself, she's just trying to fit in. But then came the requests. "Can you not wear that floral dress to the engagement party? It's kind of loud." Or, "Maybe don't bring up how hard things were after Dad left, it makes people uncomfortable." Each one was like a pinprick to my soul. Tiny, subtle reminders that I wasn't wanted in the picture she was trying to paint. Not as I truly was. She didn't want her mother, she wanted a version of me she could polish, control, and silence. The engagement party was my breaking point. I showed up in a simple navy dress, one Emily had once said made me look elegant. But the moment I walked in, I knew I didn't belong. Conversations stopped. Eyes scanned me like I was a stranger who got the address wrong. Jason's mother greeted me with a smile so tight, it could cut glass. She called me Margaret like it left a bitter taste in her mouth. Emily barely made eye contact. She was too busy playing hostess, too busy impressing people who looked down on everything we were. I left early, without saying goodbye. After that night, I withdrew. I stopped texting first. I didn't ask about wedding details. I waited to see if she'd reach out. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. When she finally called, it was to tell me they'd finalized the guest list and that because the venue was tight, they had to make some hard decisions. My heart sank. "Mom, it's best if you don't come to the wedding," she said, trying to sound casual. "Jason's parents feel like there might be tension." I sat there, frozen, the phone warm against my cheek, her words colder than any winter I'd known. I asked her once, just once, "Is this what you really want?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I want the day to be perfect." That was her answer. Not love, not family, not inclusion, perfection. And apparently, I didn't fit that picture. I wasn't pretty enough, polished enough, or pliable enough. In one decision, she threw away decades of love for the approval of people who would never bleed for her the way I had. My daughter didn't just uninvite me from her wedding. She erased me from the most important day of her life. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't tell her how many nights I stayed awake sewing her baby clothes, or how I worked sick just to buy her first phone. I didn't remind her that when her appendix burst at 13, I slept in a plastic hospital chair for 3 days without leaving her side. I simply said, "Okay." I hung up the phone, set it down, and stared at the wall for what felt like hours. I was numb, hollowed out, like someone had scooped the heart from my chest and left me to feel everything and nothing, all at once. That night, I pulled out the wedding gift I'd been working on for months, a handmade quilt with patches from Emily's childhood clothes, her first day of school dress, her softball jersey, the scarf she wore in the Christmas photo with the missing tooth, each piece stitched with memories, with love. I folded it, wrapped it in tissue, and placed it back in the box. Then, I slid the box to the back of the closet, out of sight, out of reach, because I finally understood my presence wasn't a blessing to her anymore. It was a blemish, and she'd chosen to cut it out. In the days that followed, I kept expecting something, regret, apology, a change of heart, but it never came. Emily posted photos of bridal showers, dress fittings, and champagne toasts. I wasn't in a single one, not even a mention. People congratulated her. No one asked about her mother. I watched from a distance, each post like a knife. But I said nothing. I didn't want pity. I didn't want a forced invitation. What I needed was to finally face the truth. Emily had made her choice. And in doing so, she showed me exactly where I stood in her new world. It's funny how people think betrayal is always loud screaming matches, slammed doors, broken plates. But sometimes, betrayal is quiet. It's a soft voice saying, "I love you," while pushing you out the back door. It's smiling faces, hiding knives. It's being replaced not with hate, but with indifference. Emily didn't rage against me. She simply deleted me. Like a file she no longer needed. And that's what broke me. Because silence isn't peaceful when it comes from someone you raised with love. It's a death sentence. One you have to live through every single day. The wedding day came and went without me. I knew the date by heart, but I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. Social media told me everything. The perfect white gown. The manicured gardens, Emily smiling, surrounded by Jason's family, champagne in hand, no trace of me. No caption, no mention, no shadow in the crowd. I sat at home that day in complete silence. No music, no TV, just the hum of the refrigerator and the weight of 30 years pressing down on me. I wasn't angry. Anger burns. This was colder. This was mourning a child who was still alive. I didn't cry that day. I expected to. I thought I'd break apart like glass, but I didn't. Something inside me had already snapped weeks before. I sat in the living room with a cup of cold tea, staring at the only photo I kept on the mantel. Millie at age 7, missing her front teeth, arms wrapped around my neck. I whispered, "Goodbye," not out loud, just in my mind. Because I knew, from that day on, things would never go back. A bond, once broken at the root, doesn't bloom again, not the same way, not ever. Friends tried to reach out. Some sent messages. I saw the photos. "You must be so proud." I didn't correct them. Others asked why I wasn't there. I ignored them. What could I say? That I was too embarrassing? That my daughter believed her new family was better without me in the picture? No, I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I decided then, no one would ever see my wounds. Not again. Emily had taught me that vulnerability was a currency easily discarded, so I stitched myself shut, thread by thread, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. Weeks turned into months. Emily didn't call, didn't text. Holidays passed like ghosts. I sent a single birthday card, no message, just my name. It was never acknowledged. I stopped checking my phone. The silence between us had become permanent, concrete. I no longer reached for the phone, hoping to hear her voice. I no longer imagined surprise visits or apologies. I simply erased the habit of her, like quitting sugar. Painful at first, then numbing, then nothing. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just learning to live without the person who once meant everything to you. People said she'd come around, but they didn't understand. Emily had crossed a line most children never do. She didn't just distance herself, she humiliated me. She chose appearance over loyalty, comfort over blood, and what's worse, she felt no guilt, no remorse. That kind of severance doesn't get healed by time. It gets buried. That's what I did. I buried it deep. I threw away old notes, photos, birthday crafts. I kept only the memory of the child she used to be, the one who danced with me in the kitchen and kissed my hand when I was sick. Eventually, I stopped speaking about her entirely. At work, when someone mentioned their daughter, I nodded politely and changed the subject. At church, when people asked about family, I said, "It's just me now," and it was. The house became quieter. But I learned to live inside that quiet. I learned to enjoy the sound of my own breathing, the feel of sunlight through the curtains, the ritual of making tea just for myself. I didn't need to be needed anymore. I wasn't living for anyone else's approval. And slowly, my heart stopped bleeding for her absence. Then one afternoon, I ran into an old friend of Emily's at the grocery store. She looked nervous, unsure of what to say. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry for what she did." I nodded. "I hope she's well," I said, and walked away. But inside, something cracked, because even strangers saw it. Even people who had no stake in our pain knew it was wrong. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being dramatic. I had been betrayed. And no one, not even Emily, could rewrite that truth. She may have turned me into a ghost. But ghosts have long memories. I began writing letters I never sent. Not to Emily, but to myself. Pages filled with pain, anger, questions. Why wasn't I enough? Why wasn't 30 years of sacrifice worth more than 6 months of appearances? I burned every letter after writing it. Watching the flames eat my words became a ritual, a funeral for feelings too dangerous to keep. And with each letter, I felt lighter, not healed, but less burdened. That's the thing about silence. It doesn't always mean surrender. Sometimes it means recalibration, a quiet way of saying, "I see what you did, and I'm choosing me now." Months later, I received an invitation in the mail, not from Emily but from Jason's parents, a charity gala. I laughed out loud. They wanted me to attend now, to parade around in a rented gown like nothing ever happened. The invitation was ivory, thick paper, embossed lettering, expensive, pretentious. I tore it into perfect squares and dropped them in the trash. I was done performing, done pretending. They had their picture-perfect family, but I was no longer willing to be cropped out, blurred, or edited. They had erased me once. I would not give them another chance. By the end of that year, I had rebuilt myself in quiet ways. I took a pottery class. I traveled to the coast. I started wearing colors I hadn't worn in years. Life was smaller, but richer. More mine. I no longer watched Emily's life through the window of social media. I unfollowed her, blocked her. Not out of bitterness, but peace. Because the silence she forced on me had transformed into solitude I chose. I wasn't waiting for her to return. I wasn't hoping anymore. I was free. And in that freedom, I began to feel powerful again. It was a rainy Sunday when I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it to find Emily soaked, pale, and shaking. Umbrella, no ring, just her and the ghost of the girl I once knew. Her eyes searched mine like she was waiting for warmth, for rescue. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside without a word. She walked into the house like it was a museum of her past. Her eyes lingered on the photos she once ignored, the couch she cried on after her first heartbreak. And then, quietly, she whispered, "I made a mistake." I didn't respond. I poured her a cup of tea. She looked thinner, exhausted, years older than the girl who had once left me behind. "They ruined everything," she said, staring into the mug. Jason's mother controlled everything: what I wore, who I saw, what I said. I couldn't breathe. Her voice cracked. And when I finally stood up to her, "Jason chose her, just like I chose them over you." I watched her cry. The tears were real, but so was the silence that came before them. That silence had weight and consequences. She reached out, touching my hand. "I want to come home." That word home hit me like a blow to the chest. Once, I would have pulled her into my arms without question, but I wasn't the same woman anymore, and she wasn't the same daughter. I looked at her, steady, calm. "There is no home to return to, Emily. You left it behind. You burned it down when you decided I was unworthy of your new life." Her face twisted in pain. "Please, Mom," she whispered, but I wasn't her mother in that moment. I was the woman she'd buried and come back to find empty-handed. Revenge, they say, is a dish best served cold, but mine wasn't cold. It was quiet, composed, the kind of vengeance that doesn't scream, it chooses not to scream. I didn't lash out, I didn't make a scene. I simply stood in my truth. I let her feel the weight of the silence she created. That's the thing about walking away. You don't slam the door. You just let it swing shut and lock behind you. And when they return, they realize they no longer have the key. I offered her a blanket. I let her sleep on the couch. But in the morning, I didn't make breakfast. I didn't ask her to stay. I told her I had errands to run. I left her with the same emptiness she had once left me. It wasn't cruelty, it was clarity. I wasn't punishing her, I was showing her the cost. Love, once broken and ignored, doesn't wait forever at the doorstep. It moves on. And when it does, it becomes something unrecognizable, something unreachable, like me. Emily stayed 2 nights. She folded laundry, washed dishes, told stories, tried to play daughter again. But I didn't respond the way I used to. My laughter was distant, my answers short. She kept waiting for a sign that everything could return to what it was. But nothing did, because what we had, what I gave her, died the moment she told me I didn't belong. That moment became the grave for our bond. And you can't resurrect something you chose to kill. On the 3rd morning, she asked, "Do you forgive me?" I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "I don't hate you, Emily. But forgiveness isn't a light switch, and trust doesn't grow back where you scorched the earth." She looked away. "I thought I had time," she said softly. I nodded. "You did, until you didn't." She packed her things. No hug, no tears, just silence. The same silence she once gave me now returned, like a mirror she couldn't escape. After she left, I stood by the window and watched her car disappear down the street. I felt no triumph, no joy, just resolution. Revenge isn't about destroying someone, about reclaiming the parts of you they tried to erase. She didn't get a grand confrontation. She didn't get my pain. She got distance, absence, the echo of what used to be. She got to feel what I felt, the ache of being unwanted. Not because I said she didn't belong, but because she chose a world where I didn't exist. Days passed, then weeks. I received a card in the mail. No return address. Just one sentence. "I'm sorry for everything." I didn't reply. I placed it in a drawer with the others' gifts. Never opened, words never said, moments never lived. Sometimes, letting go is the only closure we get, and I had made peace with that. Emily had learned what it meant to lose a mother without death. That is a scar that doesn't heal. That is the price of betrayal. A wound that reminds you daily of what you can never undo. People ask me now if we've reconciled. I smile and say, some stories don't need a happy ending. They nod, confused. But I don't explain. Because deep down, I know the truth. My revenge wasn't in ruining her. It was in rising from the wreckage she left behind. It was in showing her that you can only spit in a mother's face for so long before she turns her back for good. And when she does, the silence left behind is the loudest consequence of all. They say time heals. That's not entirely true. Time teaches. It teaches you how to live with pain so familiar, it becomes part of your skin. That's what it became with Emily. A quiet ache in the background of my life. I stopped waiting for her to come back. I stopped hoping for redemption. I started building new rituals: tea at dawn, morning walks, poetry scrawled on napkins. My life wasn't loud anymore, but it was mine. And in that solitude, I found something stronger than forgiveness. I found peace. The kind that grows only after a storm levels everything you thought was permanent. I didn't tell anyone the full story. Not the neighbors, not old friends. No one deserved to hear the details of my heartbreak unless they carried part of the weight. And no one did. Not really. Pain like this is private, sacred, in a way, because when your own child turns their back on you, it breaks something deeper than trust. It cracks the very foundation of who you are. And if you survive that, if you crawl out from beneath that rubble, you never walk the same again. You do walk slower, wiser, unapologetically alone. Years passed. I saw her once, more briefly, in a grocery store parking lot. She had shorter hair, no ring. She looked thinner, quieter, more real than I remembered. She saw me too. Our eyes met. There was a moment, half a breath, where time stood still. Then she turned away. No words, no wave, just silence. And somehow, that was enough, because that silence said everything. It said, I know what I did. It said, I'm still carrying it. And I walked to my car with a strange sense of peace. Some ghosts don't need to be chased. They haunt themselves. I think about her sometimes. Not every day. Not with longing. Just reflections. Memories that arrive like leaves on a breeze. The way she used to say mama when she was sick. The time we both got caught in the rain and danced anyway. The birthday she made me a cake from boxed mix and misspelled love. Those memories aren't poisoned. They're just shadows now. Gentle, distant. I keep them tucked in a quiet place where they can't hurt me anymore. Because what's gone is gone. And the woman I am now doesn't live in the past. People ask me if I miss her. The truth, I miss who she was. But that girl, she died the moment she chose convenience over love. The moment she stood beside strangers and erased the woman who bled to raise her, and the woman she became, the one who let others define me as unworthy. I don't miss her at all. That version of her was foreign, cold. I grieved her, buried her, and then I moved on. That's the price. That's what she paid. Not in screams or punishment, but in absence, in watching a door close that she thought would always stay open. Revenge wasn't about making her suffer. It was about showing her that love has limits, even the mother's. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to shame her. I simply removed myself. I let her sit with the echo of her own decisions. And over time, that echo grows louder than any argument ever could. You can't silence guilt. You can only live with it. And every time she remembers her wedding, she remembers the seat left empty, the silence where my laugh used to be, the mother she turned away from and couldn't get back. I've seen her new life from afar. She's moved cities, changed jobs, changed faces, trying to build something new on top of broken foundations. But the thing about foundations is they crack, and they don't forget what was buried beneath them. I imagine she lies awake some nights, wondering what it would feel like to call me again. But she won't. Not because she can't, but because she knows I'm no longer hers to return to. She chose, and I let her live with that choice, fully, quietly, completely. I didn't become bitter. I became better, stronger, more rooted in truth. I still sew, still make quilts, but now they're for shelters, for women like me, women who gave everything and got silence in return. I speak at grief groups, not about death, but about abandonment, because sometimes the deepest cuts don't bleed. They ache, and those aches are invisible to the world, but not to us. We carry them with grace, we survive them with fire, and we build new stories out of the ashes. Emily once said she'd take care of me when she made it big. I remember that. I remember believing her. And now, I take care of myself. I make my own peace. I don't need her promises anymore, because I've seen what they're worth. And I've learned too late for her that a mother's love should never come with conditions, but it should come with boundaries. And when those boundaries are broken, there is a cost she now knows far too well. So this is my ending, not a happy one, not tragic either, just true. I don't wait for apologies. I don't hope for healing. I live, I breathe, I create, and I let the silence do what it does best. Mind those who walked away that some losses aren't loud. They're quiet, permanent, final. And in that quiet, my daughter will forever hear the echo of what she gave up, a mother's love, and the last chance to come home.